Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Strength Squad podcast. I'm your co-host, Steve Cardi.
And I'm the other guy, Nick Scopoletti.
Me llamo Esteban Cardi.
All right.
No, you do your name in Spanish.
It's just Nicholas.
All right, man, whatever.
It's like Nicolas.
Trying to diversify our show here.
It's not. There's nothing in Spanish for my name.
We have a great show for you today, guys. Charlie Weingroff is joining us via Skype.
Yeah.
Via the internet, Charlie Weingroff will be on our show. So tell us a little about Charlie.
He is a world-renowned PT and trainer. He's known for his series, Training Equals Rehab. He's worked with, most notably, Canada basketball. I mean, countless professional athletes. I believe he goes to Miami and works with some of the Miami Dolphins down there, some football guys. Yeah, he's one of the best. He's one of the best sources for PT, and like PT in the training world have kind of been, getting closer and closer as the years have gone on with like FMS and all these things. And he brings it together with the Training Equals Rehab, and his knowledge of training and actually doing PT rehab is pretty extraordinary. You know, we've talked in the past about how that's kind of gets lost in a lot of PTs, and this guy is not. So Charlie is one of the best, brilliant guy. Every time you see him speak, you're always fired up. He's an animal. He always gets after it, and we're excited to have him on the show. Can't wait.
Yeah, hell yeah. Good one today. Before we start, let's open this thing up with a dad joke, shall we? Per usual.
Hit it, Steve.
So my dad said he's starting to get a dad bod, and I told him, nah, it's looking more like a father figure.
That's actually pretty good.
Yeah, got him. Crack the egg. Go ahead, spread that one, fans. Quick announcements here, guys. Make sure you guys go ahead, subscribe to all of our social media. We're at the Strength Squad podcast on Instagram. Although if you already follow us on Instagram, it should just be there still already, so you don't have to like go change. Strength Squad podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Make sure you guys go to iTunes and Stitcher. Leave us a 5-star review. Leave some comments, and then make sure you go subscribe to our YouTube, man. Check out our videos. We got some great videos up there and more great ones to come.
We got tutorials. We got programs. Everything. Lower body.
What?
Upper body.
What?
Core.
What?
Demos.
What?
Mobility.
Whataburger with cheese. Awesome. So I think before we start here, we're going to slide into those DMs. Send some news to y'all. Sensual news, not nudes. We're not allowed to do that.
We're allowed. It's frowned upon.
Yeah, that's true. So this week's article is a article by Charlie Weingroff, our guest. Tell us a little bit about the article, Nick.
So the article is talking about basically your return on investment, not with money.
ROI.
But with your exercise selection. So building certain qualities and how you can do that with the least amount of load possible. The example he gives, one of my favorites, of course, we talked about this in the past, kettlebell swing. A 200-pound guy swinging a 53-pound kettlebell will produce, and force plates and studies have shown, will produce like 800 pounds of force into the floor, right? So chances are most 200-pound guys, though, can't deadlift 800 pounds, right? So it is a way to create a ton of force with using a lighter, smaller implement where it's going to be safer for this person to do it. Basically, he gives progressions and regressions, and for him, it's called lateralizations and regressions. So that is the main gist of the article. It's not just about the kettlebell swing. He gives multiple examples of like the squat and things like that, but doing lowest load possible to help create tension and create the amount of load you want to create a response. Example, like you could squat a super heavy back squat, but if you don't have either the mobility or the strength, like you could get it done, but you're risking a lot, and how long is it going to take you to recover? So he talks about that, and one of the things, and we'll get into this, I might be going on a little tangent here, like I always do, but one of the things that I love is, he talks about in Training Equals Rehab is, I just blacked out.
You went too far into that zone.
I did. I got so deep.
Right. Just wrap it up. They could read the article.
Yeah, you read the fucking article.
All right, guys. So without further ado, here is Charlie Weingroff in our interview with him that we had on Skype. So hope you enjoy. Bye. Be right back. Want more of the Strength Squad? You can check out all of our social media on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Also, check us out on YouTube, where you can watch all of your favorite Strength Squad videos. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review on iTunes and Stitcher.
Stitcher? I just met her. All right, everybody. We are here with Charlie Weingroff. Charlie, how you doing today, man?
What's up, guys?
Just wanted to start off by saying thank you for joining us, dude.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You're making me do the video. I never do the video.
You look good on video, man. You look sharp.
Not possible.
So yeah, we'll just kind of hop right into getting to know you a little bit. So, you are a strength coach, physical therapist. So just tell our audience kind of like what you're up to now and what you're doing currently in the strength and conditioning world.
Well, if you're asking like what are my jobs, I divide my time over a couple different responsibilities. Primarily, what I would consider like where do I go to work every day, my main home, if you will, and I definitely consider it a home, is Drive 495 in New York City. So I've been there since coming back from working at Marine Corps. I started there in 2011 when I was able to finally get my license in New York. And right now, I'm usually over the last several months, I've been there maybe one time a week because of some of the other things that I do. But usually, I'm there Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's a rare Thursday that I'm there, where I have regular schedule. It's just when you call the gym or you contact me, this is the location that I'm able to see people privately. On Tuesdays, I'll have a similar situation at a gym, Fit for Life, owned by my good friend Thomas Phillips. And this is much closer to my home in New Jersey. So if I'm not traveling or doing anything, usually my work week is Monday, Wednesday, Friday in New York, and then Tuesdays in New Jersey. So today is Tuesday. I'm done for the day, and we're on here talking. Over the last several months, I consulted with an NFL team, so I was there at least every Thursday and Friday. Sometimes I stay for the game, sometimes not. I'm also the director of performance for Milos Raonic, who is at the moment, has dropped a couple spots, but after winning Wimbledon about a year and a half ago, was ranked as high as 3 in the world. So I'll work for him from afar. We have a staff of some really good people that handle a lot of his medical and athletic responsibilities, and then for certain times of the year, I'll be there live and whether I act as a manager or doing some things as a therapist or strength coach. I'm the director of physical performance for men's Canada basketball, which again I do largely from afar. And when the senior national team, which is where we have the most NBA players of any country not called America. That's when I will act as the director of sports science and head strength coach. So it seems like a lot of different things, but some of these things are very staff, managerial, where obviously I have the responsibility, meaning I would get fired if things don't go well. But that's a good situation of being able to put great people in place and have them handle other situations. And then there's times that I'm on site, and then the rest of the other things that are not formally scheduled of just traveling, whether to speak at a conference or teaching my own course, et cetera, et cetera. I wound up doing a little bit of less of that this year with some of the things that I did in the NFL. And that's this coming up. We're about to start the Perform Better lecture series, where it usually begins in December. For some reason this year it began in January. And I think it might be this weekend where it starts in New Jersey. I'm not on that ticket, or maybe that was last week. I'll be in San Francisco the last weekend in January. It's me, Lee Burton, Martin Rooney, Todd Durkin, and then just the schedule just keeps keeps rolling. I don't think it really has a lot of gaps until middle March.
Wow. So you don't have anything going on at all. Awesome. A lot of free time.
Yeah. I'm just a hermit.
Just read training books all day. Don't leave your house. Yeah.
Watch Netflix.
Sounds cozy. And so how'd you get your start and everything? Like, give your background kind of with being a strength coach and a physical therapist as well.
Like, take it back to like first time lifting, what you trained for, that whole deal.
First time lifting is easy because it was with my dad. And I remember down in the basement, we had some kind of bench set up that had like sand weights.
Yes.
And then some kind of, I remember it wasn't Solo Flex, but it was like some knockoff like that had the bands. And he would show me things, and just like, I think all of us probably at some point started as maybe not nowadays, but if you're around my age, really old. We all started out of bodybuilding magazines.
For sure.
That was really the only resource. There certainly was no internet. I don't.
Right.
Yeah, I don't even remember there being like a sports performance facility. I remember one of the high schools had a gym teacher that would do it. You'd sometimes hear about it. It wasn't. It was in Toms River, but it wasn't Toms River North when I was in high school. But I remember lifting like maybe 9-10 years old, and then just continuing to. I found that I was always strong, or relatively strong, and I'd like to say I was okay at sports. If people have never heard of Toms River, then this is like baseball America, and
right.
I was captain of a baseball team, so I probably didn't suck. But that being said, if all three high schools had one team, I don't even know that I would have gotten any playing time or would make the team. So I was always lifted to be better at hockey and better at baseball. And as I went into college, I kind of already had the idea I didn't want to be an orthopedic surgeon or a sports doctor. I didn't think that they spent enough time with people. So I already had it in my head to go to college to be an athletic trainer. I thought that was going to be the way I was going to stay in sports. I wanted to be a certified athletic trainer. That was what I kind of at that time, you didn't have to go to get your degree in athletic training. You could have got it in a similar degree and then just made sure you had all the coursework. You can't really do that anymore. And then go on to get a master's, exercise phys, kinesiology, and be a trainer at a college. And that was kind of the plan at that point. So I wound up graduating college in 3 years. So I had to quit baseball to make sure I had my hours to be an athletic trainer, and just still always lifting. Then when I quit baseball after my second year, that's when I started to, whether the football guys in the off season, that's when I really started to quote unquote lift heavy. I was always strong, but then I got into like, I guess at that point, like fake powerlifting, like just lifting heavy. And my Eastern European body type seemed to make me successful and enjoy being able to lift heavy things. So also around my second year, my what would you call her, like advisor would suggested after she saw my grades, she's like, you should go to physical therapy school. And I'm like, I don't think that's what I want to do. She's like, go to physical therapy school And you'll always have, first of all, you don't know, like maybe you'll find something else that experience brings you, but it will make you much more credible as an athletic trainer, even if you want an athletic training job. And that was largely true because a lot of opportunities that I've had is because I was a physical therapist. Now, a couple of times I've had to talk my way through it, meaning it was almost like held against me because there's been times like, well, why do you want to be an athletic trainer for this $30,000 or $40,000 job when you could be back in Northeast making at that time maybe $60,000 as a junior entry level physical therapist? I said, well, this is just what I want to do. So I wound up going to PT school, and I always thought coming out of PT school, I was either going to be a pediatric physical therapist, which not a lot of people know about me. I'm not very public about the children that I work with for a number of reasons. Not that I'm public about anything in terms of breaking privacy, but I think like when we do stuff like this, if I talk about situations, there's some level of exploitation. Like, I'm doing this is my time. I hope people, are at worst entertained, or at best somehow utilize my services in some way, shape, or form. So I think there's like, that's like kind of like this dark thing that no one ever talks about. Of course, we're all doing this. You guys are doing this for some positive motive, and hopefully it some way translates financially in some way. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying that. I do think I don't want to do that to a degree. I'm doing it right now about working with challenged children. So I don't do a lot, but it's what. So I always thought I was going to either do that, somehow having a career in the NFL, thinking that PTATC was going to be something that would be very marketable, or go to the military. And none of those things happened.
Such as life.
Because everything just sucked so terribly that I wound up in the NBA instead. So
there you go.
Oh yeah, terrible situation. So and then as however many years later, been in the NFL, been in the United States Marine Corps Special Operations Command. So check, and things work out. So obviously I'm leaving out a lot of the stuff that it's everybody has their outlier story, and a lot of people that that I look up to, that are my big brothers and mentors, they actually don't like that I would say I got lucky in terms of having a lot of high profile positions. And I'm like, okay, fine, I get it. It's the whole whatever the cliche is, luck is preparation and opportunity, blah blah blah. Okay, fine, I hit a double off the wall at some point, but I still had to get a chance to pinch hit, and I don't hate telling all the different jobs and all the different specifics, etc. Because but ultimately it's all just luck. Like, no one can reproduce it, and it's really a very similar situation to what you see in Gladwell's book of Outliers. And I don't mean to put myself in the same ilk of people like Bill Gates, because that's absurd, but to tell my story is nothing but aggrandizing. So I'd rather not get into it. I feel like I got very, very lucky. I feel like at least at certain times I conducted myself in such a fashion that people wanted to be around me. And when I had a chance to deliver a service, I was ahead of the curve. And I think those are the things that people can control. And if people want to do what I do, which good luck with that. But when you get a chance, like both socially and clinically, just dominate, and people will want to be around you, and they'll want to give you opportunities. And I think I've had a host of failures as well. Another thing no one ever talks about on these things, like there's been a lot of miserable disappointments and failures along the lines of some of the things that I even mentioned before. And you just try and fail again to learn from those things, and just see where the chips fall, and hopefully you have enough positive anchors in your life that those failures are not immensely meaningful. And that's probably my story. It's probably everybody else's story, just maybe put it to a couple different words.
Absolutely. One of the things that we wanted to cover today, especially me, because I was watching your DVDs, watching Training Equals Rehab 3.
It's pretty good, right?
It's
dope, man.
It's all right.
Special effects are crazy, dude.
See Ari down in the front. That was cool. Seeing some familiar faces. But yeah, so I'm only like halfway through. It's a lot. So I'm only halfway through. But one of the things we wanted to talk about is it was like, I think it was in the first disc, and we want to talk about starting at the finish, kind of. You were speaking about someone using a golf club that's not fitted for them. And they went into a rehab setting, they got hurt, went into a rehab setting, and then right after that, they went right back to that club. And I don't teach golfers, I don't golf, but I take that in my head as they're going back to, say, whatever lift, say if it's a back squat or whatever that hurt them, they go through rehab and they're getting back to the back squat and not realizing there are other options out there and other ways to create a training response. So if you could speak to that a little bit, that's something.
Yeah. I think I'll craft the words a little bit differently, because everything is a training response, and I don't think that it's wrong to say that. But I'll try to say it a little bit differently. When someone has a particular entry point, so if the entry point is injury, and the primary goal is to create a training response, like you say, to change the back pain, we can't assume that number one, doing something directly to the back is the answer. I think we're there, at least in the training and competent therapy world. We kind of know that the area that hurts isn't always, if not rarely, the area that's really doing something that requires the intervention. It usually just got overloaded, and ultimately, though, if we don't have a large level of peripheral vision to the situation, we're not certain, like we're screwing over the person. And I think that the message of that, of start to finish, or really what I call the model, where we put all those graphics. Well, you didn't get to it yet on the second DVD, but you saw me like scribbling it and doing the whiteboard. Yeah. And it's about finding like how do you stratify the solution? So the therapist that's fantastic at calming down the overload at the spine, finding the neuromuscular driver in terms of hip rotation, it's thoracic rotation, etc. Whatever the construct is, like we can't possibly be done. That's really 1/4 of the potential solutions that can be had for someone that's being injured. So if we put the fundamental movement, which the therapist did a fantastic job at, it doesn't mean that the therapist has to continue the evaluation, but the peripheral keen evaluation has to continue to suspect that maybe the bigger reason as to why this individual was injured doing something was because they did not have the level of fitness to tolerate their physical limitations, plus the activity that they chose, plus the manner in which they were doing that activity. So if we're going to talk about golf, we now keep going back to the left, and the next box that you saw was biological power. So maybe if this person had restrictions in their front side hip rotation, which led to back pain, it's a very common remedial concept in golf. Maybe if they were more fit and had more work capacity to how they were practicing and playing golf, maybe the rotation and the lack of lumbar stability would have not been identified as a threat. And the more fit you are, the less relevant your physical limitations are. Now, that's all relative, because then the next step to the left was technical and tactical. If we're just talking about practicing the golf swing, how you swing, it almost doesn't matter. But again, the more fit you are, a bad swing that's not even properly coached and overloads the wrong joints is again going to be identified as threat. So whether the person has pain or not, something inefficient is going to happen. And then continuing to move one more box to the left to the fourth was if the golf club is not fit correctly, then they have no choice but to swing the club wrong, at which point they're gonna outrun their fitness, which may be even high, at which point then the physical limitations become paramount. So that's actually the top level of the model, where we're trying to find where is the best solution, or how do we prioritize multiple solutions. So in your guys' case, if you're talking about someone who's lifting, so just make it simple, sumo deadlift. So you really only need hip mobility. Like your arms are at your side. If you're using a negative shin angle, you probably don't need any dorsiflexion, but you need knee and hip mobility to get down to the bar. So if you don't have knee and hip mobility, then you'll probably round your back. There's probably other things that you can do, and a lot of people don't like their back rounding. The best thing that can happen is that they don't lift a lot of weight, or as much as they possibly could. The worst thing that can happen is that there's some kind of tissue injury and threat response. So, but again, moving back to the left, maybe it's the seventh deadlift that hurts them. And if the first six were okay and the seventh wasn't, it's a fitness issue. It has to be. It means that the cost of the first six deadlifts led to some kind of probably humoral, some kind of hormonal, some kind of chemical response that then changed the motor strategy. It's why we get hurt when we're injured. It's why we get hurt when we're tired, because things change. You build up a lot of exhaust. I'm talking a lot about this summer with Perform Better. Now, technical and tactical, like if nobody ever taught you to pull the bar into your shins and then pop it up, the bar doesn't have to roll, but you pull the bar into you, and you were like dumped way, way over, and you were kind of like doing a row with no elbows. You now have this highly disadvantageous system of levers, and or maybe you just had too much weight on the bar, or maybe the bar was like from some bogus commercial gym and it had no knurling, and you had to do something different just to hold on to the bar. And that's where I think when we try to access expertise, then there could be the best physical therapist in terms of calming down back pain, but if they don't even understand the other three blocks, then they didn't serve the person. And I think what I was trying to express was that no one person can really do all of this. It's not possible. Maybe for deadlift is different, but for golf certainly not. Any therapist who purports themselves to be a golf therapist is really just a physical therapist that wants to be a golf pro. It's very important to know enough to pass it off to someone else because they're better at it. And that's something I believe very, very strongly. It's something so technically precise as the golf swing. Like, you can't be good at everything, but you can know a little bit about it. Like, you're just a hobbyist. Do you want the hobbyist to help you, or do you want the man to help you? And that's where, do you need four of those people? I think in some situations you probably do. You need a therapist. You need a great coach for fitness that understands the physical demands of practicing and playing golf, because in that sport they're dramatically different. You need a great golf coach that understands what the fitness guy is doing and understands what the medical guy is doing, so he can recommend to get on top of things before they become threat responses. And then you need a golf fitter. And most golf fitters are not teaching pros, even though they certainly can be. So what I was trying to get at the top level of the model was that it may not be what your passion or your expertise is, even though you're the gatekeeper, you were the entry point, you were the first person to get access to helping and providing expertise. But you got to be able to look the person in the eye and be like, you're going to be 100% fine. You're going to get to do everything you want to do. I'm just not going to be the best person to help you. And no one does that. And I guess, a lot of people will poke at me, well, you can only do it because of this. Yes, I work in a highly, highly affluent zip code, and I charge more money than what most people do. again, I could get into a whole business, of why everybody should charge more money, because if you don't think you're worth it, then they ain't gonna think you're worth it. My point is that yes, I make enough money in 1 hour that if I never make $1 off of working with that individual again, I'm whole, I'm cool. Like, my business model works. So you just make less money, but then you develop great relationships with those experts in the other 4 boxes. And then everybody makes money. Like, I don't know anybody who doesn't kill it. You just don't make as much money as you do in Soho, New York. You make less money in wherever, Dubuque, Iowa, or whatever. I mean, but I think people are so afraid to trust and pass off to other people because they don't know how to communicate along the language that I was trying to teach in all the DVDs. So it can apply to any task, and that's also very important. It also applies to non-physical tasks as well. The words would be a little bit different, but a little bit of exploration when I was at MARSOC, but a lot of times now in terms of this very engineered, systematic model of creating solutions, it applies to a lot of other worlds other than what we're all experts in.
You said one thing that kind of stuck with me and stood out to me, particularly about movement. And I'm kind of paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly what you said, but it was something along the lines of you used to think that perfect movement was like perfect biomechanics, like everything biomechanically was perfect. But what you then kind of changed your mind to was perfect movement or something like that is not perfect biomechanics. It's resiliency in positions that aren't so perfect. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Okay, so I'm sure I would have said it on the podcast, go listen to everyone I've ever done. The best way for the little old lady to not hurt her back reaching into the cupboard to get a bowl is to squat perfectly. That way, ideal biomechanics. And just like I hope everybody would say, like, you look back at things that you did, like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. That's asinine. Many years ago, a long time ago, a friend of mine named Jeff Kubos, he's a chiro in suburban Edmonton, my home and native land in Canada. And I'm not.
I know you're from Jersey. I was like, what?
It's like an inside joke too. He introduced me, Patrick Ward, and I think someone else, or maybe we were the three of them, to someone he went to chiro school with, and that fellow's name was Andreo Spina. And
heard of him?
This is way before anyone knew who he was. And he wanted to introduce us to his model that we now know as functional range. It's absolutely fantastic. And we just wound up it just didn't happen. Like, we didn't go or whatever, the schedule didn't work, and we were all willing to like, he wanted to show us his stuff. And I think you show me yours, I'll show you mine. I mean, we don't have courses like that anymore. Everybody's just got to, package their stuff, and it's very, very mechanistic in terms of technical approach. That's not what Spina was doing, and we were interested. It was then multiple years after that where Spina had a much larger push of his model that, again, we now know is functional range. And we went and started to learn his soft tissue model, but he has what I call like a mini system. So if the stuff that I talk about takes you to a tissue, like a musculoskeletal construct, that's where your solution is going to be had, there is no better system than what he's teaching to then apply to my system that takes you there. Okay? So what I'm saying is that if you have a joint or a soft tissue solution, there's no better way to then systematize your decisions through what Spina teaches. And there's in his model, I don't mind at all promoting him. In his model, there is a component that a therapist would do using their hands, and then there's components that therapists and coaches would use to then support what the therapy we're doing, but they're both applying the same levels of science. So let's get back to the answer to your question. Spina showed me, and I wasn't like appalled. It wasn't like, oh my God. Like, I think what he was saying made so much sense, and it just showed where I was wrong in my belief about that little old lady. And I understood it because of me. I understood it because of living in the level of powerlifting that I lived in over the last 20 years, and I'll probably never compete again. But around 10 years ago, I might have been pretty good at a highly competitive level. And we always would talk about, if I ever get back surgery, they're gonna have to like knock me out like an elephant, and they're gonna need a jackhammer to get through my lamina. Because when you deadlift and squat a lot, your bones get bigger, they get thicker. And what Spina was really teaching at a very, very rudimentary commentary, it's not necessarily what he would say at a scientific level, but like when you load tissues, whether it's bone, artery, vein, muscle, tendon, it doesn't matter. If you load the human body, it grows. And you can use specific models of loading, but the bottom line is time under tension makes tissues remodel and adapt to the load again. So if you can exceed the tolerance of the load to exceed the tolerance of the tissue where it doesn't break, it will get bigger, it will get stronger, it will get more mechanistically resilient. So now how do you take that to that little old lady? If you can put her into a lousy position and apply time under tension, which is just a very simple concept for most people to understand, the tissues that would typically fail don't fail under exceedingly high loads. You can't go from 0 to 1 billion. But now you understand like how like intelligent coaches like Louis Simmons would talk about doing a rounded back good morning, which at some points, like, that's absolutely ridiculous. That's the most stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Right.
And I love talking about it because, again, it's a little bit of something I said a little before. No one ever talks about like their failures, and I think we should be very careful of people that never ever talk about their failures. They're not teachers, for one, because if I can tell you how I failed, maybe you won't fail. But ultimately, the excitement that I have, and I don't care if it's like fake humble, that's not my point. The excitement that I have of like that answering a question like that and crediting someone who I'm so thrilled can support his family the way he did, knowing that ain't nobody wanted to take his class, whatever it was, and how he being so close to him and knowing what he went through during Cairo school. The bottom line is that we can render evidence-based injury mechanisms, lumbar flexion, lumbar compression, flexion and internal rotation of femur and humerus, any impingement of the lumbar spine, ankle, shoulder, knee valgus, all of these things that evidence would tell us if you do this a lot with a lot of load of any kind, these tissues break. Well, if you know that you're going to be in those positions, we actually have a very, very keen level of science to render those injury mechanisms irrelevant. And by making the tissues, if it's the ligament, for instance, if you want the medial collateral ligament to not break, put it into an awful looking, poor biomechanic position and create tension. And you will have a very, very thick, bigger a ligament, and that ligament will now require more load in order for it to fail. And that's where I was wrong about, getting back to the original statement. We don't have to be perfect biomechanics. If you want high levels of force production and minimal joint wear, then perfect biomechanics is the answer. That's how you'll lift as much weight and probably use the same concepts that Spina is talking about to contractile tissues. And you'll spare the other types of tissues. Maybe you don't want to spare the other kinds of tissues. You'll use significantly less weight, and you will challenge the joints that would typically break. and apply the same concepts of time under tension and progressively increasing load for a different reason. It's a different version of strong. So I think that's what you're asking. If not, I took a lot of time to answer the wrong question, but hopefully a good story nonetheless.
No, yeah, for sure. But kind of segues into the next part of the question, which is, so, I mean, is there good technique? Is there bad technique? Is technique
Yes.
that something's going to be like, is someone going to have good technique like 90% of the time, 100% of the time? You know, is there like a...
I'll jump away from Spina. I'm not sure I know he would agree with what I'm saying, and I agree with everything he says. I think sometimes he'll say things at a level to make his point. So I'm not going to make his point. He can do that for himself. Yes, there is absolutely such a thing as bad form. I mean, if you're going to tell me that you're going to use the same form that will make a medial collateral ligament more robust in terms of more collagen in the direction of injury. So that means your knee is buckled and you're going to squat that way, you're going to do isometrics that way, whatever you're going to do. If you're going to use that form in an attempt to win a powerlifting meet with your A game, then you're a jackass. And you're going to say that's good form? That's ridiculous. That is not good form. Okay? However, we do see people squatting lots of weight and their knee buckles in. Well, why did that happen? Well, I think there's a number of reasons, but motor stress. One of the reasons that it's not is that they didn't try to do that. They were trying to stay in a great centrated neutral position, but they still got up and down. They still got 3 white lights, and their knee didn't break. Well, likelihood that when they went for that repetition, the accumulation of acidity in the bloodstream and hypoxia at the local tissues, which is now a combination of all the things we talked about before, would probably create, I think what we do know from motor skill acquisition science and literature, but science primarily, is that motor skills become inconsistent under those types of taxed conditions. So just because the time under tension was not enough to break the knee, it doesn't make it good form. You got lucky. You had lucky form because he didn't try to do it. So if you try to do it with 7 wheels on your back, let me know how that works out for you. Like let me know how it works out for you to do a rounded back deadlift with 95% of your max with good form. Like that's stupid. That's not good form. However, doing a rounded back deadlift, what's it called? The Jefferson curl, or is that what it's called? Like, yeah, you guys would know that. I don't even know. So you're gonna stand on a 12-inch box and now do a rounded back, something, the rounded back deadlift, and I think that's a great thing. I do it sometimes. I do it with, but I've deadlifted, a lot more than other human beings, and there's people that have deadlifted a lot more than me. I can do that move with a lot more weight than other people because the tissues that are being stressed have already been stressed from all the hitches that I've done, since the age of whatever, all the missed lifts that I had, the 2 times that I had a back injury when I was much younger lifting. So your body builds up a level of resistance that other people haven't. So can I do a rounded back deadlift with more weight than someone else? So good form for me is different than good form for someone else. But for what? Like good form for what? So of course there's bad form, but it doesn't mean that form in question is bad for a different type of adaptation and a different type of outcome. That's where I think, because Spina wants to get his point across so strongly, he'll say there's no such thing as bad form. I understand what he's saying. I'm not going to give the impression that having your elbows out, and putting the throat, putting the bar with 3 wheels over your throat is good form. I could definitely see doing that for an empty bar for a competitive bench presser that might be in that position on occasion, and that's highly scientific and evidence based to create resiliency in that very contractile tissue based weak poor position. I hope that all makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
So, essentially to kind of wrap that point up, I mean, of course there is bad technique, there is bad form, but there is something to be said for the resiliency of your body and your tissues in not so perfect conditions and not so perfect
Look at
places.
look at gymnasts. Look at Cirque du Soleil. They're a different version of strong.
Yeah.
Like if you take a gymnast to like a fat piglet somewhere, they're gonna be like, oh my God, they're like really strong and fit. Okay, like they look good, they look the part. Dude, put them in a weight room, they can't do anything. They can't, and then vice versa. You take someone else that looks like that trains like a bodybuilder, where they're always training in mid range. They can't do an iron cross. They can't do what they do. It's different versions of strong, and it's got to be when we talk about good form. It's got to be task specific, and then you tell me what are you trying to adapt to, and then we can talk about what's good or not good form. But of course, there's bad form. I mean, come on, that's really not in my for me to say. I don't feel good about saying that there's no such thing as bad form. Of course, there's bad form.
Word.
Got you. So one of the things that resonated with me the most so far on the DVD was talking about how some trainers are, so overly into, and I'm so guilty of this about 3 years back, into the correctives, trying to fix people, and they're trying to be a bad therapist instead of being a good coach.
There's a couple comments to that. Number one, I've come to suggest, first of all, I don't really use the word corrective because I don't think we're correcting anything. I don't know that there's anything wrong to always suggest that a motor skill adaptation is fixing something. It might have value but that's where when you do the whole evaluation, you might find that you don't need those things nearly as much. Like we need to increase mobility. We need to have high levels of motor skill, precision, and mastery in complex exercises. But I don't know that we always need to be like. I don't think something's always wrong that we need to use the terminology corrective, because then we get into fixing people. Like I don't know that fixes anybody. I'm not saying that there's no use for these types of exercises. There's a high level of utility. But if we have to look at the whole model to see when they're positioned correctly. That being said, if you are someone that is really excited, and basically a corrective exercise is a fundamental motor skill. So that means the joints can do what you want them to do. That means they have the mobility to get into the positions, and they just don't. The person doesn't know how to do it correctly. Well, let's find what is the barrier to that. And if the barrier really is motor skill, then there's a set of rules that you would apply to helping someone learn how to do something. You cannot teach someone how to do something if they can't even get into the right position in the first place. This is number one where we become like bad therapists. Not me, I'm a very good therapist, but where anyone, if you can't, and this is where if they don't run an ideal movement, a keen movement evaluation to see if the limitation is consistent across many different positions and physiological states, or can they do it sometimes and not other times? Because if they can't do it ever, then your corrective exercise is not going to do anything. It's impossible. Like if you can only go from A to B and you're trying to get them to C, it's a different set of rules to open that gap and open the joint's ability to actually create excursion. And you wind up doing corrective exercise forever because you picked a good corrective exercise for the right pattern, except you didn't bother to determine if the pattern was a stiffness restriction or a skill restriction. In motor skill literature, there's two terms that they use. They use abilities and skills. The corrective exercise is teaching skills, but if you don't have the ability to do it in the first place, then you lose. It won't work. You can't teach somebody a skill to stabilize a pitcher to stabilize his shoulder at 110 degrees of external rotation if they only have 90 degrees of external rotation. You're picking the wrong exercise, the wrong stimulus, the wrong stressor, for the adaptation that you want. So that's one thing. The other thing is that there's probably someone that's better at it than you. So if you're a coach and you primarily see people to improve their health and wellness and fitness and body shape and athletic development, those are all totally different stressors than the stressors that help teach you how to do things. And if you then take any portion of your day to not get better by failing and experimenting and being your own scientist of trying to get people to lose body fat, like for instance, if you do that 90% of your day and you do 10% quote unquote correctives, that means you're taking 10% of opportunities to get better at the bread and butter, and you're only getting better 10% of your time. There's probably someone else that takes 100% of their day to do body fat. Where do you want your grandmother to go? You know, would you go to somebody, like if you want to lose body fat, do you want to go to somebody who takes 9 out of 10 hours in their experience of getting after it? Or do you want to go to somebody who takes 10 out of 10 hours? That means over a period of time, the other person has more hours of experience in making mistakes. The whole idea is work with a team. Like you're because it's never 90-10. I gave you the good example, like 50-50, 60-40. You know, I know people that will take FMS, assuming that the FMS is done correctly, and they have some kind of algorithm based on the total score, which is really unfortunate. I think we're past that. The total score in the FMS is really not the way that we should be interpreting the valuable information from a properly executed functional movement screen. But so if they have numbers of X to X, they spend 20 minutes on correctives. If they have it from Y to Y, they spend 15 minutes. It's unbelievable. So now if you're most of the time in a commercial setting, the trainer who's like really intuitive or he's interested in the corrective piece, he's taken a couple other courses that feed that fire. He's gonna wind up with all the lower scores. So he's gonna wind up taking 20 minutes, to get after these things, assuming that he's even good at it. Like assuming that he's picking whether he's picking a mobility drill or a motor skill drill. That only leaves him 40 minutes out of every hour to make mistakes, to get better at why that person went to the gym in the first place. And I think that's just a very, very misguided approach to very, very effective, very, very important drills. You can't get good at everything. And what I would ask is like, where do you want, when you need knee surgery, do you want to go to the guy that only does knees, or do you want to go to the guy that does knees, shoulders, a couple elbows, and some ankles?
Knees.
Like which?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know who would answer the other way. Given everything equal. I mean, there's brilliant surgeons that that do all of those things. But ultimately, if you at that, I don't get it. Do you go to a seafood restaurant and get a steak? I mean, that's just not. It's why? Why would people say? Why do we laugh at that? Well, because it's a seafood restaurant. They're good at seafood. Well, right. Because it's just so weird to me that but the real reason as to how that whole all the different coursework and the whole message is because most therapists, doctors, healthcare providers, they suck. And they're handing off, or the clients are so disgusted with the outcome that I just need to go to a trainer and get in shape. And then you know that you can't get them into shape because they need mobility or motor skills. And motor skills and mobility interventions do not typically help you lose weight. So It becomes this lousy circle. And I hope from seeing my DVD, the message is not you're a bad person for being passionate about corrective exercises. It's work with a team that has work with other people that has similar passions. You'll make so much more money for one, but ultimately the person will get served by someone who takes a lot of time to make mistakes, meaning they're going to be better at it. And that's really what I was trying to get across with that concept.
Going back to correctives, something I've heard you say multiple times, which I've actually has really kind of struck a chord with me, and light bulbs went off everywhere. Whether it be like a coach to an athlete or just an athlete on their own, cramming rehab things, like rehab movements or exercises or stretches into their warm up.
So it's something I've heard you talk about multiple times. So if you could talk about that a little bit, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So in my opinion, the warm up is this opportunity to make the main part of the training session more fruitful. I can get more out of the workout if I do a good warm up. I think that's why we warm up. Something desirable will happen during my competition or my training session if I do a warm up efficiently. Okay, so I tend to think that when we argue about things, we usually actually agree. I think what I just said, most people would agree. The reason for a warm up is to optimize the desirable outcomes of training or competition. In my opinion, the 4 goals of a warm-up should be to increase tissue temperature, prime the mobility that you have, ... not gain any more, prep the nervous system, and rehearse the movements of your impending training or competition. Okay? So if we also and I think that should happen in a period of time. Okay, so most of given the periods of time that we're going to compete or train, sometimes it's not very long. Maybe 20 minutes, maybe less in more unfortunate situations. There's certainly nothing wrong with a 60-minute warm up. That's also a very good thing. So when we look to populate that 20 to 60 minutes or whatever it might be of a warm up, in my opinion, I'd like to choose vehicles that can do as much as possible of those 4 things. I don't really care about other adaptations. And in the warm up, I'm not even sure they're adaptations, they're adjustments. Because if you don't train and let the warm up go away, you no longer have increased tissue temperature. Your mobility is no longer primed. Your nervous system is no longer prepped. And your rehearsal is useless. That is what I would call an adjustment to the nervous system rather than an adaptation. So to that point, if we are putting drills or vehicles, vessels, choices, it can be anything, that are meant to do something other than those 4 things, I think we're wasting our time. We're making the warm-up worse, and you likely do not have enough of the time under tension if it's a mobility drill, because I don't think you're going to get more mobility out of a warm-up. You're just going to touch the edges of what you have so that your nervous system is aware that you can get all the way out there. I don't think you're going to have a variable situation, which is one of the requirements for a motor skill. You're not going to learn. You're not working on hip mobility. You're just mobilizing your hip. You're not getting more mobility. You're just touching the edges. If you actually want to get more, time under tension is part of the solution. That's the main concept, I guess, to that. So I think we stash things in the warm-up because intuitively we know they're not going to make us bigger, faster, and stronger, but they're a pretty good idea. Well, they don't fit in the training session. So where do you put them? Well, nobody ever does a cool down, which is probably where they should go, at least the mobility drills for other reasons. A passive stretching has been shown to increase absorption of anabolic hormones after an intense training session. So now you can work on mobility and absorb more of all of these hormonal effects that are in the system from hypoxic strength training. That being said, you can't. The only other place to go is the warm up, and the warm up doesn't have the variables in order to achieve mobility or motor skill acquisition. So if I'm going to do something that's motor skill oriented, does it check all 4? It might check 1. It might check 2. So it's not the worst idea. I don't think anyone's hurting themselves. I just don't think it's the best idea, and you're definitely not doing what you think. You're just moving. If I step with my right foot and twist to the left, I'm not working on thoracic mobility. I'm rotating my thoracic spine. Those are 2 totally separate things. Rotating your thoracic spine, which does not engage your barrier, does not put you in a situation to fail or or succeed and does not leave you to do it on your own in a variable situation is not motor skill acquisition. It's just moving. Moving is a really good thing to do, but you're not working on thoracic mobility. You're just moving. You're moving in your thoracic spine. They're both good for very different reasons. So you're not working on things. You're not prehabbing. You're just moving. Like what system are you overloading? You're not overloading any system. So let's pick drills that maybe check 3 or 4 of the boxes instead of just 1 or 2.
Word. I like that.
Perfect. Nailed it.
A lot of words.
It's okay. We like it. We enjoy it.
Man. Hey, it's we're going good. I'm sure more than 5 people are going to say I like hearing myself talk. What the fuck? I don't know.
Any more of the serious stuff?
Well, one thing I do want to touch on, and this is probably the hardest thing to relay to some clients, and I want them to hear it since you are one of the best in the world, a physical therapist and strength coach. I want people to know that lifting, and there's I've worked in some PT settings, and some PTs and doctors, whatever it be, are like, you shouldn't, don't lift, don't go too hard, don't, do anything. You could stretch and do this. But like you're saying, and I try to relate this to people all the time, tension is what causes change. So doing strength work, I just basically want you to reiterate that in a way to so that I could, almost not demonstrate to people, but I just want people to hear this message so much that strength training is the answer. When you say training, from a movement level, and you saw this on the DVD, everything's like in series of 4s because I make like a square. Even since the DVD, the bottom has 6 components, the left has 4, the right has 4, the top has 4. I've already given you some of them, but we can move with the purpose of 4 ways. We can move to change pain. We can move to increase excursion or mobility. We can move to learn to move a certain way, and then we can move to be resilient to moving more. Now we have to define moving more. But any one of those 4 ways, if I perform strength training with proper form, I didn't say good or bad, I said proper form, and ideal excursions, I'm actually working on all 4. And if one of those 4 limitations was the reason that brought them into a healthcare professional's care because they had some kind of threat, pain, whatever you want to call it. I'm always keen with my words. I hate when people argue with me because it's just an argument. No one's going to win. Like, they're wrong. It's okay. But when you can train with external load through deep excursions, maintain ideal mechanics, lots of good things happen. And I think we do know that whether it's musculoskeletal or other types of health concerns, strength training and fitness, neither of which are comfortable, are commonalities to either recovering from unfortunate circumstances or limiting the occurrence of those circumstances. Now, I probably, in an effort to be fair, the likelihood, of course, is that the people that you're hearing these messages are unintelligent individuals, and they also don't care. But maybe it's just because their level of intelligence is only governed by what they see. And if they only see people that have problems because of poor choices in what they think is called strength training, I can't really blame them. I would blame them by not even trying to listen to someone that has this message. Like if you're challenged, by if you're the messenger, and this is another, I think you guys can tell a lot of the things, I'm taking your questions and almost giving you spiritual responses. If someone says something to you that you're hopefully just collegiately offended by, like they didn't insult your mother, like you just don't agree with them, like you're offended collegiately. I think a lot of times people take it personal if you collegiate, like
I don't like the FMS. Oh, okay. Like anything else? But
Right.
if you say to a doctor or someone that unfortunately holds themselves above you, and they don't listen to you, dude, find a new doctor. Like this can't be. Like this is, they have to hey, guys, hey, come here a second. You were talking about strength training. I just see a lot of people that just aren't doing well with that. Can you explain to me what you mean? And you got a shot now. Remember I said, somebody gave you a chance to pinch hit, you better hit a double off the wall. Don't tell them about actin and myosin and mitochondria. If we do this correctly under the particular set of rules that we all go by, I think we know that there's a better way to do this probably than what they did. And if we do it with the rules of how the body adapts, and we dose it, and we give them a little bit, and we shock them, and then we create resistance, and we shock them again, and we create resistance, and then we're going to get to a place better than where we started, which is called overreaching. And if we're not intelligent, we're going to not develop resistance, or maybe we'll overreach, but we'll be stupid and keep going, and then we'll be into exhaustion. And I just outlined the 4 terms of general adaptation syndrome, which is typically modeled after an immune response. But the fact of the matter is that we're going to see the same immune responses in situations of poor training. And it's not just tell somebody to lift. It's not just tell somebody to do these things. It's trying to crack the code to what makes a man do what they do. And if somebody is so resistant and they're so stuck that they want to do it their way, I think that's really unfortunate. And then we should shift our communication strategies to how do we get the person that we do care about away from these very dangerous people. And now you better pray and be a warrior and hold your weapon properly, because people hate the truth and they hate to admit they're wrong because they really don't want to win. They just want to do what they want to do. And that's where we have to all get better at how we verbalize what we want. And that's another thing that I know. I put something on Facebook yesterday, and it's so interesting how the stuff everything that I put up is some ulterior message that only a few people know about, and it was sometimes we all have to grow up, because from what I understand, one of our coming up conversation pieces would indicate that maybe I haven't grown up a lot, but it was something. In 2000, I think it was 2001 or 2002, I was an intern for the Boston Celtics 2 summers in a row. And of that group, I think, let me think, 1, 2, 3, 4. At least 4, if not more, of us all got to the NBA soon thereafter. And 2 of which, one is now one of my best friends. The other one, another very good friend that we talk to a lot. And I'm going to do my best to not name names here. I think we are all aware recently in the NFL, there was a situation where a player had his own guy there and didn't really work out too well. Lots of negative publicity that are extending into this current weekend, where as that team prepares for the playoffs. Well, I was just in a very, very similar situation, and he was commending me on how I played the role much differently than the fellow did at the other team. And I'm like, I take a lot of pride in this type of change that he noticed. And I said, sometimes we all have to grow up. And my forms of communication was probably a lot different than when he and I remember of myself in 2002, and had probably led to a lot of the failures that I have had in my career. So I give you that little soliloquy to take you back to your kind of question, which I think was what do you do when your question isn't really what do you do when people don't want to strength train. It's what do you do when people don't do what you want them to do. And ultimately, the easy answer is 2 choices. You tell them to go fuck themselves, and you go find a new playground to play on. And a lot of times that is the right answer, not using that terminology, but it's just moving on. Not not every groups of people are going to be matched up properly. But I think, and Gray Cook taught me this, he's like, if you really do want to convince someone that you're right and they're wrong, you start with a commonality of what you really do agree. And in that case, I gave you the message before. If you can think like your opponent, Sun Tzu Art of War, if you can think like your opponent, you win. Like, you know what he's going to say before he says it. That might also lead you to point one where you have to go leave because they're going to be so frustrated at you that you build a brick wall and they can't get through it. There's nothing, because they know you're right, but they just refuse to admit it. And that'll happen too. But ultimately, if you can start to show that you actually do agree, and you don't want them to strength train. You want the benefits of strength training. And I bet that idiot that you're talking to also wants the benefits of strength training.
Right.
And start the communication that way. I think you'll find that, and I'm not telling you that because I read it in a book. I'm telling you that because I've done this the hard way, maybe more recently than you even want to realize. And that's how I think that's how you handle those situations. We just find people that have the same core values and the same core beliefs, and this stuff becomes real easy. But if somebody if they just want to do what they want to do, much more than winning, then it's not going to work. You have to take your ball and go home.
Gotcha.
You know what's hilarious is as you were getting more and more fired up, like more and more of the light was like shining on your face from your house, and you were like glowing more and more.
I didn't even think I was that fired up.
Well, speaking of growing up, let's talk superheroes.
So I can give you a lot more interesting information about DC than Marvel, but go ahead.
All right. So that was my first question. Are you a DC or Marvel guy? But all right, so DC.
From the comics is DC. But from personal communications in the movies, I think probably most people know I'm more familiar with Marvel, and we know that the movies are not the same as the comics. But I think you can read between the lines. There's a lot more Marvel Cinematic Universe people that I have on my cell phone than DC.
Okay, word. Yeah, that's fair.
DC's doing. I don't. Identify with it.
I don't get it.
DC's doing a weird job with the movie.
I don't understand. I don't get it.
And I'm not like big on it. Like Steve has really, done it his whole life. But like I go see the DC movies, I'm just like, I just don't like follow it. I don't know what's happening. Like who is this guy?
I don't think anyone knows. No one knows what's happening.
I follow it. I just don't understand why they making. But look, I'm not a movie guy. I mean, I'm not a movie director, but
they're just not as good as Marvel. Like the movies are just infinitely better.
Not as good. Yeah, they're not as good.
All right, so before we wrap this thing up here, we want to do a superhero lightning round. So kind of test your knowledge a little bit as a superhero buff, and then also kind of get to know the inner superhero that is Charlie Weingroff. So,
fuck, I know superhero, man.
All right, so question 1: if you were a superhero, would you use your powers for good or bad?
Well, given the fact that I've taken this long to answer,
I was like, "Damn, he's thinking about it."
Yeah.
Dark side.
Of course, I would do good, but the reason I take a long pause is because the bad guys in wrestling are way more fun than the good guys.
I know, for real. It's always the heel, man. It's always the heel. All right. Question number 2. Daredevil, a.k.a. Matt Murdock, is a superhero with what physical challenge?
He's blind.
Correct, sir.
even though somehow he actually can see. I don't know.
Right.
Oh, how about this? So you're going to ask me a stupid, easy question like that. Is it true or false that Matt Murdock was blinded by the same secret ooze that created the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Was it the same ooze?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck. Now I'm thinking, like... Because
on you, Steve.
instinctively I want to say no, but...
It wasn't, but there's rumors. Like, if you look it up, you'll see that there's stuff written about it.
Like, from the same company or, like, same substance?
Same. Like the
Shit.
Turtles were in the same sewer that had the whatever got into Mac Murdoch's eyes.
Dude,
that didn't happen. That didn't happen.
You're like you're transcending the difficulty of this list right now. It's not going to be that hard, but like.
All right, so yeah, you're gonna ask one, and then I'll give you a different one.
Yeah. Okay, so you answer with some more heavy shit. Would you rather have the power to teleport or to read people's minds?
Oh my God! After all the stuff we just talked about, you think I don't want to read people's minds?
I knew that was coming. I knew.
Okay, here you go. So read people's minds. In Toronto, there's a Canadian accent, by the way, my home and native land. There's two airports. There's the main airport that's out in the suburbs, and then there's one that's called the Island. There's an island on Lake Ontario, and golly, if it's not Lake Ontario, I'm in big trouble. Okay, so those are like little tiny planes, and you can go still from Toronto to Newark. So I'm in the bulkhead because that's the first class of that. It's not first class. You just probably pay extra. And so this person is not my client. So I will tell you about this story. Speaking of reading people's minds, who sits next to me? Famke Janssen.
Oh shit!
And not what you would hope for in person, which is probably the case of lots of Hollywood folks. Okay, like very uncomfortable. Oh my God, this is Famke Janssen. This is Jean Grey. Oh my God. And I muster up the courage to say, "You're not going to read my mind, are you?"
Yes, I'm so fucking happy that's what you said, dude. I'm so happy.
And she didn't answer me.
But you know what, dude? If you were to like not ask that, you would just be like, you would just wonder what if the rest of your life. Like, what if I asked her that question?
Yeah. No, she didn't answer me.
I love that you asked that though. That's amazing.
That's called stepping up.
She didn't even acknowledge it. Like nothing.
No, she just like turned away, and it was that in itself was kind of funny, but
well, you got a great story out of it.
Yeah.
All right, you better know this one, dude. In the history of the superhero Wolverine, what indestructible element was bonded into his skeleton?
Adamantium.
Word.
Even I know that one.
Yeah.
All right, dude, shut up, man.
All right, this one's hard because this person was my client, so I don't know if I can tell you this story, but
sure.
Next.
Great story. All right. If you were a superhero or villain, would you wear a cape?
Oh, here you go. Hold on. I got you. I read something on the internet that suggested that if you remember in Wolverine the movie, Sabretooth is not like of any kind of Sabretooth that we know from the comics, right? Like it was his same name, Victor Creed, but he wasn't like a human. He wasn't a humanoid. He certainly wasn't brothers with Logan like he was in the movie. But in the first 3 X-Men movies, he was like this beast, this like, man wolf kind of thing. I read on the internet that Liev Schreiber would have agreed to come back to do more of the Wolverine storyline if that version of Victor Creed went into Project X, got loaded up with adamantium, something went wrong, and that's how he changed, evolved into the Sabretooth that we know.
Interesting.
And on some account, I believe that to be true.
So, like, if what happened to Sabretooth was, like, pretty much along the same lines as, like, what happened to Wolverine.
Except it would have gone wrong.
Like, some went wrong.
Yeah, and that's how Victor Creed that we saw in Wolverine first standalone would have become the Sabretooth that we know from the comics and the first 3 X-Men.
All right. So, okay.
I read that, and you can look that up on the internet. So that's where I got it from.
Listen, dude, you're way more prepared than this list, so just humor us here, okay? If you were a villain or superhero, would you wear a cape or a mask?
A mask. That's a cape is stupid. I don't like a cape.
We said the same thing.
Exactly,
I would not.
yeah.
I'm not feeling the cape, dude.
No.
In 1999 was my first year in the NBA. And I knew we played a road game, like a preseason game against the Golden State Warriors in Mexico. there was nothing that was going to stop me. I took $100 American, which is probably $1 million at that time in Mexico. And I'm fluent in Spanish. Not a lot of people know that. They're like, oh my God, I didn't know you could speak Spanish. I'm like, why would you? I gave the $100 to one of the bellmen, and I said, I was about to say it in Spanish. I said, buy me as many wrestling masks as possible.
I knew this was coming.
He came back with 12 wrestling masks. I don't know. And then in Canada, for Olympic qualifiers 2 summers ago, we again played in Mexico, and I don't know if I ever made the pictures public, but looking at NBA players wearing wrestling masks. So Matt, I would wear a mask.
Hell yeah,
awesome.
I'm with that. Here's a curveball for you there, dude. Thor's weapon is a hammer. What is the name of Thor's hammer?
The name of his hammer is Mjolnir. And
right on it.
Yeah.
God damn it.
and I think when you do things at 100% intensity, you call it Mjolnir intensity.
I got you.
Oh, good.
I like that. I'm gonna start using that. Would you join the X-Men or the Avengers?
Avengers.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I would go
'Cause
X-Men.
I would want to be like Hulk's apprentice. So
Okay, yeah, I see.
That's his fave.
I would just go X-Men just because it's cool. They have like a school where they all stay, and also the girls are just
Dorms.
way hotter. Yeah, I think all.
You know what? I absolutely did evaluate the hotness of the girls in X-Men.
Okay.
And
You've encountered one. You've encountered one in real life.
that was part of my decision-making process. But I've also encountered some of the Avengers females too. So
I hear you.
Yeah.
Which Batman villain did Arnold Schwarzenegger play in the 1997 film Batman and Robin?
Dr. Freeze, is that his name?
Mr. Freeze.
Yeah.
Mr. Freeze, yeah.
We'll give you half a point. We'll give you half a point on that.
You know what's interesting? I of DC, like I am the least knowledgeable of the specific Batman canons.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay. Word. Got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
That.
I didn't even know Suicide Squad existed.
Oh, I read that one. That was a better comic though. That movie sucked.
I knew Harley Quinn existed through the cartoons, but I didn't even know like that the Suicide Squad like was part of something.
They came around, I think, in like the 90s. I think they started to come around the Suicide Squad. They're not like an old thing. Would you have super strength or super speed?
Strength, next.
I chose that one as well. Last question before we wrap it up. What is the real name of superhero Captain America?
Oh, that's easy.
Okay, so we're waiting online at Universal, and we're waiting online to see Captain America. And the guy kind of looks the part, but none of them at Universal really like are the right actors or the way they wear their outfits. So I go up to him and say, "Hey, what's up, Steve?" And like, and his face dropped. Like it took him like 2 or 3 seconds. It probably felt like 5 minutes. And he goes, "Oh, I didn't know we were on a first name basis." And then I like shook his hand and took the picture. So he did not. The actor probably did not know that his name was Steve Rogers.
Damn.
Oh.
Damn. Do you think that I feel like that can't be? How do you take on the role of that character and you don't know that though? No?
Well, I think it's because of the as being a student of a lot of Disney parks business practices. I don't think Universal has the same intensity, meaning that they particularly when it comes to in Disney they're called face characters, like when you can actually talk. Like the princesses or whatever. And even though these are like high school chicks, they are completely unflappable. You can't mess with them. There's nothing that they don't know. Now, the actors that play in whether it's the superheroes that are in television or any kind of historical, like there's something else, like when Kurt Russell in Miracle, like they know everything. Like so I'm a Green Lantern guy. So if I had a conversation with someone, I don't know, that knew something about Green Lantern, they actually know every answer. So if some jerk like me tries to ask them a stupid question, they can come back at them with the sensational wit and sarcasm that a brilliant actor would have. I don't think at Universal they teach them that, because there's no way this dude would not know like that he would be Steve Rogers. But if you went up to like Cinderella in Disney and like, you know, asked her where Drizella was, because I'm sure you guys know that's one of the stepsisters' name. But
totally.
like she would like, oh, thank God I don't have to see her anymore. I've left the house. Like they would have some kind of immediate answer where you can't touch them. Like you can't. They're unflappable. I don't think in Universal they're like that.
So Universal is just like, yeah, this guy looks good looking, blonde hair, blue eyes. All right, put him out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I remember Spider-Man was kind of cool. Like he had more of like he was a little bit more Spider-Man. I mean, Captain America doesn't even have like a whole lot of, you know, quirks to him to play him. But I just tried to one up all your little questions here with some real life story.
Listen, man, it took me a long time to come up with those guys.
I hate that Chris Evans is what he's actually good, obviously, as Captain America. But when they named him, like I find it insulting because, you know, in the Marvel universe, like he was Johnny Storm. It's like you can't. This is too much. Like you can't ask me to believe that he's Johnny Storm. And now that Disney bought all those Fox properties, and I think he put like a funny tweet is like, what happens when I meet Johnny Storm or something like that. And then hopefully they break the fourth wall or something and go like. Yeah, they do like that. Like that'll be funny.
Well, that's what they had to do with Deadpool because it was kind of like the same thing. You know, they kind of like reinvented Deadpool with Ryan Reynolds, but that like that like cross of hey, you weren't you already a Marvel character? Like that was kind of weird.
Yeah, because that character makes a lot of sense for him to be like mega sarcastic.
Yeah, for real.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, man. Before we wrap it up, where can people find you? Social media, anywhere?
So my website is very creatively named charlieweingroff.com.
How'd you come up with that name?
Man, ask my parents. I don't know. And Facebook is Charlie Weingroff. Instagram is Charlie Weingroff, and Twitter is CWagon75.
Sweet. Perfect. Awesome. Well, Charlie, man, thank you for taking the time today to join us, talk about some rehab, talk about some training, talk superheroes. And totally like deflect all of our shitty superhero questions we had for you. So thanks, man. We appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Later.
Want more of the Strength Squad? You can check out all of our social media on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Also, check us out on YouTube where you can watch all of your favorite Strength Squad videos. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review on iTunes and Stitcher.
Stitcher, I just met her. All right, Strength Squad, welcome back. That was Charlie Weingroff.
Yeah.
PT Strength Squad extraordinaire.
And Marvel and wrestling expert.
Yeah, absolutely. So hope you guys enjoyed that episode. We're going to wrap this thing up here real quick. Before we go, we just want to thank you guys for being loyal, humble fans.
Yes. Following
us in the Strength Students podcast days, and now our Strength Squad journey has begun. So thanks so much for sticking with us, man. We appreciate you guys so much. We got merch coming your way, too. So if you're a real fan, we're going to rock some dope shit. Shirts. We're doing thongs. Man thongs.
Thongs are only for us, though.
Yeah.
We have 3. 2 for us, and 1 lucky fan will win one.
They'll be used from us, and we'll auction it off. But yeah, before we go, guys, always, make sure you guys go to iTunes, Stitcher, 5-star review, leave a dope comment, leave some feedback. Go to our YouTube channel. Same thing, man. Click that subscribe button. Check out all of our dope video content and leave us some comments. Leave us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you guys. And as always, our social media. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Strength Squad Podcast or at Strength Squad. If you just type in Strength Squad in the search bar, you'll find us. So
we's there.
So thanks for joining us, guys, and we will see you next episode.
Later.
Deuces. Want more of the Strength Squad? You can check out all of our social media on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Also, check us out on YouTube where you can watch all of your favorite Strength Squad videos. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review on iTunes and Stitcher.
Stitcher, I just met her.